G'day everyone, this is the Breville Barista Express Impress, model BES876. This is actually the first video I make with this model, really excited. This is very similar to the Barista Express if you're familiar with that machine at all. It's an all-in-one single boiler machine that does it all. And in this video I'll show you how I use it and how I make my coffee in the morning. I'll be making a latte. So what I like to do, I like to turn it on about 5 minutes before I make the coffee. So before, when I wake up, I'll go brush my teeth, go to the toilet. I'll let it warm up, and I'll keep the portafilter in. And over the next 5 minutes or so, it'll heat up the boiler, heat up the pipes and solenoids and the group head, enough for me to make a coffee straight away if I want to. But I can also warm up the machine a bit more by running a blank cycle, a blank shot, and that's pretty much just putting a glass under the machine, outputting water from the handle, and that'll warm things up for us, so we can get an optimum temperature for the espresso. And it's very easy to do. Make sure the portafilter is on. Get your cup. Press the double button. That's going to give you about 100 mils of water. And in the meantime, you can maybe go grab your milk. There we go. Yeah, you can do that once or twice, it's up to you. I think once should be fine considering we've left the machine on for 5 minutes. If you're going to leave it on for more than 5 minutes, you can also put the cups on top. The top lid does get warm. After that 5 minutes, maybe even more, it'll get even warmer, because this sits right on top of the boiler, as you can imagine. Won't get the cups piping hot because it's plastic, but it'll get them warm and at least make it easier to get a hotter coffee. What's next? So next is the grinding. So you'll take out the portafilter, make sure it's dry. You want this to be dry before you grind, otherwise the grounds will like clump up if they get any water on them, and it might not tamp properly. So you want to start with a dry portafilter. I'm using the double basket. I didn't actually show you the accessories. So the machine comes with a few accessories. Breville will always include a lot of things in their packages. Obviously this comes with a manual and quick start guide, a milk jug, stainless steel milk jug, good enough for one to 2 cups of coffee. 4 filter baskets. So we've got the 2 on the left, which is the double that I have in the handle now, and the single. These are called the single wall, and these will work best with freshly ground coffee or freshly roasted coffee. If you're tamping manually, using pre-ground coffee, so that means you can't use the built-in. Actually, you can, but if you can't, if you don't have fresh beans or good quality beans, you may try to use the dual wall baskets. These ones, as the name suggests, they're made with 2 layers. So then the standard ones are just one single layer, very simple, and they have multiple holes underneath. This is the classic sort of design of an espresso basket. This is the same sort of basket they use in the cafes and the more professional machines. Whereas the dual wall baskets, they might look similar, but underneath they have the one hole only, so that all the water, all the coffee going through here will be pressurized and forced into that one hole right here. I don't know if the camera is picking it up. I hope it is. It is. And yeah, so that's going to pressurize your coffee. It'll give you a decent espresso. Maybe not the best espresso, but a decent espresso for a beginner or for someone who doesn't have access to fresh beans at the moment. So let's say you're making decaf coffee. A lot of the time decaf comes pre-ground, at least here in the shops that I have. They come pre-ground, and what you do is you scoop the coffee in here. I've never tried it, but I believe you can manually tamp. So if you level the coffee, this is me figuring this out on the spot. If you level the coffee, the pre-ground coffee, you put on the, I guess you can use this, the portafilter. I don't see why you can't tamp. The machine will give you it will give you like feedback on how much coffee there is and if it's too much or too little. We'll get into that in a second. So with the baskets aside, yeah, long story short, if you have fresh coffee, use the ones on the left. They may be a bit harder to use to get the right pressure and the right coffee quantity, but they will taste better. These ones will be easier to use, but they may not taste as good. And as a bonus, the ones on the left are actually easier to clean. So when you knock it off into the knock box or the bin, they'll fall off much easier. With these ones, you'll have to knock them a bit harder. Okay, with that out of the way, you also have a razor tool. I guess for a beginner, this is important because if you start using the manual dosing or even the automatic dosing and you get too much coffee in the handle, the machine will tell you that you have too much coffee, and you'll need to scrape off the excess. So instead of getting rid of the entire dose, what you can do is just use this to. I have another one here to trim the excess. So this will remove the excess coffee and give you the right depth of coffee, which is about this much, if that interests you. And finally, you have the cleaning kit. Straightforward. This has 2 tablets, which the machine will ask for. It will tell you when to clean. The information is all in the manual. But long story short, if this is flashing, you need to do the cleaning cycle. If it's solid, you need to do the descale cycle. And also comes with a rubber disc, which is the one for the cleaning cycle. Comes with a brush for the group head, and I believe it also comes with the Allen key to remove the group head seal in a few years when you need to change it. Right, let's actually get to the coffee. Using the double basket, the single wall variety, I will actually weigh the dose. So I'll turn on my scale. You don't have to do this, of course, but I'm doing it for your interest. This being a semi-automated machine, it really takes out the guesswork out of dosing. So if you don't have a scale or if you don't know anything about espresso, it will help you make a good espresso. That's what I love about this machine. It combines a bit of the manual side to the automated side. Sort of unlocking espresso for a lot of people who are scared to get into the world of espresso. Okay, you have a manual and an automated mode. When this is on, when the dial is on, you're in the manual, and obviously you can see the manual light LED on. This will sort of allow you to choose the seconds, exact seconds. I guess you can say up to half a second increments of how much to grind for. I don't like to use it. I haven't used it yet, and I'm not exactly sure how many seconds you start from the lowest to the highest, because the automatic setting is so good. Press the dial, it'll take you to the auto. This means the machine will figure it out. It will dose a little bit, tamp, it'll ask you to dose again and tamp again until it gets to the right level. And if it gets too much, you'll use the razor tool to scrape off the excess coffee. So it's really foolproof, I would say. Really makes espresso quite easy, and it's quite consistent. I've been using it for a while now, and it's quite consistent, I would say. You also have a single and double selection, so I'm using the double, so I'll keep it on the double setting. I believe that's where it was. Hopefully we didn't mess it up just now. A dose button here to start grinding. Unlike pretty much other barista machines like the Express, the Pro, and the Touch, you actually don't have a button at the end of this cradle. You have to press this button to grind, which is a new thing for me. But it's fine. It's part of the feedback cycle and telling you if you have the right amount of coffee. Anyway, you also have the single and double brew buttons. From factory, this will give you 60 mils and 100 mils. And when you make a coffee, if you have the right settings, they'll actually give you, I think, 30 grams and 40 grams of coffee, which is good. Approximately, these are very approximate, and they will depend on the beans and the grind size you're using. I didn't mention the grind size dial on the left. Obviously, the built-in grinder, you have to adjust it to get the right fineness or coarseness. At the moment, it's at 6. Each bean will be different. Each machine will be different. So you can't really borrow someone else's settings or ask anyone what numbers are you on. A good rule of thumb is to start in the middle. I believe this one has 30 grind sizes. I can't remember. So start in the middle of that range, which I think is 15. Make a coffee, and if you get too much coffee, grind finer, and keep adjusting up and down until you get the right quantity of coffee, which is something we'll get into in a second. Okay, I've talked for so long, my scale actually turned off. I'll turn it on using the automatic setting. I will start. Okay, ask us to temp. There we go, you got it right because it remembered from last time. It's in the green. That means we have the correct amount of coffee, the correct depth. For OCD's sake, I like to do it a couple more times just to like polish it up a bit more. But I don't think you have to. If you get too little dose, so you have 3 bars, 1, 2, 3 below the green and 3 above. If it's too little, it'll be in one of those bottom 3 illuminated in red. And that means you have too little coffee, obviously, so it needs to grind a bit more. It even has a logo to show you that it's too little for that bottom one. So you put it back in its position, press the button again, and it will ask you to temp after it's done, and then it'll check again. So after you temp, if it's to the second or third LED, it'll ask you to do it again. You may get it right and go to the green light in the first, second, or third try. When you get to the green light, that means the machine is happy. It will memorize this setting for the next coffee that you make. If you get too much, so 1, 2, 3, the 3 LEDs above that green light with the logo showing too much coffee in the basket, obviously that means you have too much coffee in the basket. And instead of getting rid of the whole amount, use this razor tool. I've had to do that once or twice, and it actually took it down to the green. So it went from like the second red bar to green. So that's why I recommend keeping this razor tool handy for this model. It can actually help in dialing in. Okay, I'll take it out. This is what it looks like. I haven't touched it. A bit of coffee grounds, typical of this machine. I'll blow off the excess, wipe it off with my finger, and then as you can see, it's a very nicely tamped surface of coffee. I'll bring it closer to the camera if you're interested to see what that looks like up close. Yeah, it's the correct depth. It looks good. And in terms of the weight, I've been getting 17 to 18 grams of coffee usually. This is 17.2, which is pretty good. Again, different beans will probably have different densities, so don't use my numbers as a guide. Usually a good range is 17 to 18 grams. Much more or much less probably will be the incorrect dose. But in my case, 17 and a half is approximately what I get. Wow, okay, we made it, we ground the coffee. Next is making the espresso. So I'll get rid of this hot water in the cup. At this stage, you want to add anything they like to flavor your coffee, so any sweeteners, sugars, syrups, if you like that sort of thing. You also have a hot water spout on here. If you turn the dial away from you, it'll give you hot water straight from the boiler. I like to add a bit of hot water just to sweeten my coffee with the sugar. I'll rephrase that. I like to add a bit of sugar with my coffee, and the hot water helps it dissolve. That's just me. I'll mix it up a little bit. I'll also use the scale to measure the output this time. A good rule of thumb for a coffee recipe is a 2-to-1 ratio. For every gram of coffee you put in, you want to get 2 grams of coffee out. So we put in about 17 and a half, we want to get double that, so 35 grams. If we did everything right, the machine will give us about 35 grams of coffee when we press the double basket, or the double button, sorry. So don't get confused with what double means. It doesn't mean 2 drinks, it just means a strong coffee, or double of what the standard shot is. So when you go to the cafe, they'll make you a double shot, which is about 18 grams of coffee, and in my case, I'm using the double basket, using the double button to make 1 latte. Okay. Put the cup in the underneath. So this portafilter isn't actually the stock portafilter. It comes with the standard one with 2 spouts. This is what it looks like. It's the same one as they have in the other coffee machines that they sell of this size. I'm using this one just because it looks a bit fancier and it gives me a bit more headroom. This is called the bottomless portafilter, if you didn't know. But yeah, it's not necessary to make a good coffee. It just looks nice in this case. Yeah, so I'm also going to time the shot. Something I forgot to mention is that doubling, so the 35 grams from 17.5, you want that to happen in about 25 seconds, give or take. Sometimes the machine will overshoot, like I said. If you have the wrong settings, it may overshoot. And I didn't talk about the grind size. You want to have a grind size that allows you to get that 35 grams in 30 seconds, or 25 seconds, let's say. If your coffee is flowing too quickly and you're getting 35 grams in 10 seconds, let's say, that means your coffee is too coarsely ground. So the grind size is too large. You need to go a bit finer. And I'm assuming you're using fresh coffee, because if you're not using fresh coffee or an old bag of beans or coffee that has been opened a while ago, supermarket beans, a lot of the time they're not fresh. And what will happen is, even with a fine grind size, large grind size, correct tamping and everything, you will still get a fast shot and a sour tasting espresso. And you also may notice the pressure is low on the gauge. That's just something that I've found with cheaper coffee beans. When you use good quality coffees and freshly roasted beans, you'll make your life much easier. Obviously, it'll taste better, it'll look better, and it'll make it easier to dial in because it'll flow correctly. Cheap coffee, or I guess older coffee, or low quality coffee, let's say, will not brew as good, and it will be really quick sometimes. I don't want to say cheap to say that you should only buy the most expensive beans. Some cheaper beans are good. I found the Aldi brand here in Australia are really good. They actually are freshly roasted, and if you look at the batch on the bag, it will say the date, the roast date. And I've been to Aldi a few times. They're usually within a week of the roast date, which is pretty good, and they're very cheap as well. So that's what I use most of the time. Right, coffee. I'm gonna time it, so I'll press the double button and time it as well. I'm suspecting I might get a bit more than that 35 gram thing, just because my beans have been in the hopper for a few days. The pressure is at about 10 o'clock position, which is actually 9 bars. So 10 o'clock on this machine is about 9 bars. Yeah, that's a bit more than 35 grams. I think that's about 50, but that's fine. It's still, I would say, it's a drinkable espresso, even if it's a little bit over extracted. Let's see. That's 46. So not horrible, but not ideal as well. What that means is I need to either grind finer or change my beans, because they've been there for like 5 days now. Yeah. So if you don't get a good reading on the gauge, or if you get really low on the gauge, again, it may be your beans are very, very coarsely ground, so too large for the particles, or the beans are a bit older. I'm assuming you're also using the green level, not too little or too much coffee. If you get very slow extracted coffee, or if your coffee is dripping instead of flowing like you saw, coming up very, very slow, and in the end of the shot you get very little amount of coffee, that means your grind size is too fine. So you need to go a bit larger on the grind size to allow the water to flow easier. Yeah, if the grind size is too fine, even with high pressure, it won't let the water go through, and you'll get very bitter coffee, a very short shot, and it'll take a long time to brew. In my case, like I said, it was a bit too quick. So in about 25 seconds, we got 45 grams. Ideally, we want to get 35 grams in those 30 seconds. But yeah, not sound like a broken record. It's the dialing in process is pretty much make sure you're using good coffee, make sure you're dosing to the green light. With those things out of the way, you change the grind size. So if you're getting too much coffee, go finer. If you're getting too little coffee, go coarser. And that's about it. Hopefully it wasn't too overwhelming. In my case, I think this is drinkable, especially because I make lattes and not straight espresso, and I add sugar, so I wouldn't really notice the imperfections in my shot. After this, I like to clean by running a rinse cycle. I think this is like 2 birds, 1 stone. You're cleaning the portafilter, and you're also cleaning the shower screen in one step. So instead of taking the portafilter to the sink, you can clean it right here. And then grab a tissue and wipe it just to keep it nice and fresh. Wipe the group head as well. Sometimes there's a bit of coffee grounds that get stuck in there. So with a tissue or a brush or a towel, it's good to clean that and keep it nice and clean. Then your machine will thank you for it. And when you're done, you don't have to lock in the portafilter all the way. Something I didn't really mention is that on your machines, and using the stock handle or the original handle, you might find it a bit tight to put on the handle, the portafilter I should say. I would say in the middle is decent enough. You don't have to go all the way to the right. But when you're not making coffee, you don't have to jam it in there. You don't have to force it because there's no pressure. There's no brewing or water pressure. So you don't have to put it all the way and make your rubber seal wear and tear. But it's not the end of the world. Yeah, just keep it in there, slightly tightened. Right. Next is the milk part of this drink. So I'll fill my jug about halfway, so just below this spout right here. That's for a standard latte. A bit less if you want to do a cappuccino. Cappuccino is a smaller drink and it has more froth and not just steamed milk. Okay. Turn on the steamer. It'll take about 10-15 seconds to start steaming. Being a single boiler machine, the boiler does have to change temperatures from 93 to 130 approximately. So once you see the steam coming out of the wand, put on the jug at an angle, keep the tip close to the surface, and turn it back on. This is not something I can teach you very easily over video, especially from this angle, but you pretty much want to keep the milk spinning. You want to keep the tip close to the surface of the milk for the first 10 seconds. And you want to keep it at an angle like this, so it's like whirling it around. And you want to hear that hissing noise, if you can hear it now. This means the milk is being aerated and it's getting more bubbles and that creamy texture. If you do this for too long, you'll get a very bubbly milk texture, like a cappuccino or a bit thicker even. If you only do it for 10 seconds, you will get a flatter drink, like a flat white or a latte. And after the 10 seconds, raise the jug. You want it to not aerate the milk too much. Keep it spinning. When it's too hot to the touch, so when you can't touch it for more than a second, turn it off. I have a thermometer on my jug here, and it's telling me 65, so it's about 60 to 65 is where it'll be too hot to the touch for most people. 60 to 65 Celsius. Here's my espresso shot. It tastes really good, by the way. I didn't really taste it before. And here's my milk. Knock the jug on the counter to break any big air bubbles. And then swirl it around to mix it up. So keep doing this until the surface is nice and smooth. It's hard to show on camera, but it's like wet paint is what it looks like. Not too watery, not too bubbly. And then pour. With some practice, you can do latte art. I usually don't practice, so I can't do latte art. But my coffees taste good, and that's what matters. Here's the final result. It looks drinkable, I would say. Not the most beautiful pattern. But yeah, that's the machine. I think it's really, really nice. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments down below. It's important to wipe the wand as well. I'm sorry. After you're done, it's good to give it a purge. So before letting the machine cool down, which as you saw it did, after you turn off the wand, it waits 5 seconds and then puts cold water to the boiler to cool it down. I'll turn it off now because I think I need to add a bit more water. But yeah, after you purge, get a wand, get a wet towel, wipe the wand. You don't want the milk to stay there. The wand is metal, so it'll get really hot.
and the milk will practically bake on there. So wipe it off as soon as you can to keep it nice and fresh. Yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully this wasn't too confusing, and if you have any questions, put them in the comments down below. And yeah, take care.